Night. The full moon hung high and stars filled the sky. The abnormal signs appearing in the sky foretold the imminent descent of the divine body. At the council of the imperial city of the 9 provinces, an elderly man in golden robes stood with his hand behind his back and looked up into the night sky. Behind him, tens of thousands of imperial city experts were seated, all of them, kneeling, froze in anticipation of a command. Suddenly the light began to condense and form a 9-color lightning bolt, which immediately collapsed from the celestial river of stars onto the earth. At the same moment, the dark night seemed to change into a sunny afternoon. As if anticipating a lightning strike, the earth trembled and rumbled violently. But, suddenly, the strike of this 9-color lightning did not cause any significant destruction, as if it had not reached the ground and had vanished into thin air without a trace. In the same instant, the world was shrouded in night again. The old man's eyes glittered unnaturally, and his increasingly agitated body overflowed with trepidation. Pointing toward the place where the lightning had disappeared, he commanded, "All babies born today within the borders of the Azure province, bring them to the imperial city." As if thunder rumbled over the horizon, thousands of imperial city experts responded and headed toward the lands of Azure province. They vowed to find the divine body and deliver it into the hands of the imperial court. Time passed. 5 years flew by quickly, and people still remember what happened that night, but no one knew about the actions of the imperial court in the lands of the Azure province, one of the 9 provinces. Among the countless schools was the Azure Dragon School. Today, there was once again a recruitment of students for the Azure Dragon School. The reason was very simple. If someone was a student of the outer court, it meant that their abilities were simply terrible, and they would not be able to achieve any great achievements in a lifetime. Naturally, they were despised. "Oh, what kind of attitude is that? Do you know who I am?" The lady in gorgeous robes and escorted by the boy, pointed at the young man and began to shout loudly, "I'm very sorry. It's too late now, and the school will close soon. Please come back tomorrow." The delicate face of the young man was still young and gentle, but between his eyebrows, there was a bit of heroic spirit. His name was Chu Feng. He was turning 15 this year, and he was one of the tens of thousands of students in the outer court of the Azure Dragon School. Although he was a student of the outer court, Chu Feng was different from everyone else. He did not consider himself inferior to others and did not humiliate himself. He did not fear or feel fear in dealing with others, and he was very calm. "Come back tomorrow." "Do you think I am a fool? We are in the middle of the mountains. Where do you think we should sleep? You must arrange places for me to sleep, or I will find your elders and complain." The man didn't care about anything, and he didn't listen to anything. He even clung to Chu Feng's clothes. "Chu Feng, are you in trouble?" Just at this time, a sweet voice was heard. Looking in the direction of the voice, a young woman dressed in purple strode by. Although there was a slight smile on her lips, her eyes were stern and they stared intently at the man. When he saw the young woman, the color of his face instantly changed and a strong expression of fear broke out. Nothing. I was just learning something from him." Smiling, the man explained. The young woman looked at her and said only one word. "Roll away." He didn't think about anything else. The couple walked quickly away, and in their panic they even tripped, which made her look rather foolish. Watching this, Chu Feng shook his head helplessly and said politely to the young woman beside him, "Thank you, Chu Yu. You don't have to be so polite. Really, aren't we family?" Chu Yu was a little upset. She was right. They really were the same family. They came from the same family. However, Chu Yu had passed the inner disciple exam 3 years ago, and had become an inner court disciple. She was now at the 4th level of the spiritual world. "We must abide by the school rules," Chu Feng said with a dazzling smile. Looking at Chu Feng's behavior like this, Chu Yu's heart began to ache. "Chu Feng, are you still not going to participate in this year's inner disciple exam? Or is it because you still haven't reached the 3rd level of the spiritual world?" Chu Feng didn't answer, and a faint smile still weighed on his face. No one knew what he meant. Seeing this, Chu Yu removed the bag from her belt and placed it in Chu Feng's hands. "Use it. Maybe it will help you get through level 3. Chu Feng opened the bag and instantly a strong spiritual energy gushed out of it. Inside was a finger-sized, brightly sparkling, transparent Holy Spirit grass. "Chu Yu, She's too expensive, I can't accept her. Chu Feng hurriedly gave it back to Chu Yu. The Holy Spirit herb was extremely precious. It was incredibly useful for those who practiced in developing the energy of the spirit world. In order to increase the speed of training, the Chu family gave out one portion of Holy Spirit grass to some of their family members every year. Chu Yu also received the family's support, but she did not use it but gave it to Chu Feng. This really bothered him, so he couldn't accept it. When I say I'm giving it to you, you have to accept it. After all, you are my little brother. Chu Yu was slightly annoyed. When did you become so generous that you hand out Holy Spirit herbs to everyone? The young man who approached was about the same age as Chu Feng, and he also wore the uniform of the inner court disciples. His name was Chu Jin, and he was also from the Chu family. He had entered the Azure Dragon School 5 years ago, the same time as Chu Feng. However, he had become a student of the inner court 2 years ago. Chu Jin, you have already successfully traversed the 3rd level of the spiritual world and have successfully condensed spiritual energy. Even if you don't have the Holy Spirit grass, you can advance quickly in the ranks. But Chu Feng still failed to condense the spiritual energy, so the Holy Spirit grass is much more important to him. Chu Yu forcibly put the Holy Spirit grass into Chu Feng's hands. Yes, you're right, but unfortunately, he doesn't want it. Chu Jin openly spread his hands and grinned contemptuously. Who says I don't want to? Chu Feng smiled slightly and casually put the grass in his pocket before answering. Chu Yu, I will take this Holy Spirit grass. Then, I'll pay you back twice as much. Okay. Seeing that Chu Feng accepted it, Chu Yu smiled happily. Chu Feng just smiled and ignored him. Then he uttered, Chu Yu, this year I will be participating in the Inner Court Apprentice exam. You? If you can pass the exam, I'll give you my annual portion of Holy Spirit grass. Saying this, Chu Jin did not hide his disdain. Is this true? Chu Feng couldn't believe his ears. Chu Yu will become a witness, but what about if you can't pass the exam? Then the Holy Spirit grass that I received this year will belong to you. Throwing these words back, Chu Feng continued to do the work assigned to the apprentices of the outer court. Chu Jin, we are family. Why do you always treat Chu Feng so badly? With annoyance in her eyes, Chu Yu looked at Chu Jin. Family? Chu Yu should know that Chu Feng is not part of our Chu family. After entering the school 5 years ago, he still hasn't passed the courtyard student exam. He is an absolute disgrace to the Chu family. You really are stupid. Chu Yu was a little angry, and after glancing at him for a moment, she walked away. Not very deep at night, in the resting place of the students of the outer courtyard. It was full of darkness. After a hard day's work, everyone was tired and went to bed early. Only Chu Feng's room was still lit by light. Chu Feng sat in the front of his bed, taking out the Holy Spirit herb that Chu Yu had given him. He muttered, I hope that I won't starve for the next few days. After saying these words, Chu Feng closed his eyes and squeezed the sacred spirit grass between his palms with his hands, making a strange seal. And just at this moment, the spiritual energy from the sacred spirit grass through his hands began to flow into Chu Feng's body and gather in his Dantian star. At the same time, chewing sounds were heard from Chu Feng's Dantian. A cloud of lightning was located within it. At the end of the 10 days, the examination to become a disciple of the inner court began. This time, Chu Feng, who had been silent for 5 years, would also take part. In the annual exam to become an inner court disciple, the first person to pass it will receive a rank for martial skill book. This is why these people are preferred to train in the outer court and not enter the inner court. It was for the sake of the 4th rank combat skill. Look, isn't that Yang Tianyu? Man, that's really him. At 13, he's already reached the 4th rank of the spirit world. It looks like the first place in this exam will go to him. In the ocean of people, one young man captured the attention of those around him. More specifically, it was a boy. There were tens of thousands of students in the outer courtyard, and most of them were unknown to anyone. Among them, however, the main figures that drew attention were geniuses, and Yang Tianyu was one of them. Be that as it may. Regardless of what Yang Tianyu's abilities are, he is a child after all. Becoming first would be very difficult for him. There are many unknown talents in the Azure Dragon School, and sometimes even geniuses can be unable to overpower mediocrity. For example, that Duani Shan. Another student of the outer court pointed his finger at the cold young man. This man's name was Duani Shan. He had studied at the Azure Dragon School for 6 years, and he was also originally an unknown student. But a few months ago he unexpectedly defeated an inner court disciple who was on the 4th level of the spiritual world. Because of this, his name was widely known, and he was the centerpiece of the outer court. Silence! Suddenly a loud and clear sound echoed. A woman dressed in a red, tight dress and showed off her seductive curves. Especially underneath the dress were 2 straight, snow-white legs. You could tell they were perfect. She was a famous beauty, the elder of the Azure Dragon School, Su-ro. Su-ro was a mentor of the highest caliber. She entered the Azure Dragon School at the age of 10, moved to the inner court at the age of 12, and became a major student until she was 15. Everyone was optimistic that she would become the #1 student at Azure Dragon School, and suddenly she was an elder. Su-ro smiled charmingly toward the crowd and spoke softly. The rules of the exam are very simple. Enter the gate behind me and exit the other gate. After that, the exam will be taken. The first person to pass the exam will receive a skill book of rank 4. Even in the courtyard you can't get it. But something is worth clarifying, the person who first passes this year's exam will receive a special award. Depending on the point of view, this award might be even more valuable than the previous one. Saying these words, Su-ro deliberately lengthened her intonation. Charming sounds filled the entire hall.